this is a panel that's going to discuss the relationships, again, kind of devoted to Star Trek, and kind of the good ones, but also some of the pitfalls, kind of questioning sometimes the writer's choices. Since it is relatively small, we would love for it to be sort of discussion-based. I think that would be awesome. So does it just hit the space bar? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're going to look at is how well do the writers portray kind of the softer side of characters. Obviously, science fiction, is very action-adventure usually, kind of, you think of very male-boy-based. But now I feel like the world's transforming, they're a lot bigger and broader, and we're kind of looking at how well do they actually portray like male-female relationships, maybe even families, just things that aren't all about the go, go, go and the adventure side of science fiction. Okay, so we're kind of speculating that the writers lost many opportunities to portray healthy, positive, and happy relationships in science fiction, which I at least feel that the fans really like, and that's part of the strong draw, especially if you look at some of the more popular aspects of Next Gen, where fan favorites are like the poker scenes, and when Picard and Beverly flirt a little bit, the fans just go crazy over that. Again, this is just some reasons that we came up with. If you have any others, is sort of just careless writing that's focusing on the big moments, the explosions, the actions that miss opportunities for character development, which a well-rounded developed character really invests your audience. Your audience is going to care more if you know behind the scenes the fact that he likes a poker game. You're going, oh. And this typical writing in action-adventure stories, that's just how they're done. Kind of an evolution. This is where we're starting, and this is where we're going, but maybe in some cases they just weren't quite there. And we expect maybe studios that are interested in money, and they just want that cash return, and they don't really quite understand that the audience cares more for their characters than the MacGuffin. I don't know if MacGuffin is sort of things that are going on in the plot that aren't important. That are important because they're making the action happen, but the audience doesn't really care. Like in How I Met Your Mother. They don't really care about the mother. They care about everything else going on around it and the characters that are there. So I'm speculating that in science fiction, we kind of care less about what's going on with the replicator and why it's not working, but we care about this nervous character, Barclay, and how he's interacting with the crew. So this should be sort of less detailed and just something to get people working together, and it should be focused on the characters and their lines and their scenes.
I think in Star Trek they used to call that technobabble in some ways.
Yeah, the technobabble side of it. Yes. So we're kind of saying that, again, there are a few exceptions that we will look at, but a lot of times there's no happily ever after, even in the Final Frontier. If you just walked in, I feel like I need to have full disclosure. Based on what was posted, this does focus a lot on Star Trek. So if that's not your fandom, I don't want anybody to be upset or anything. So first we're going to start taking a look on the original series. And that started out, and obviously there's been a lot of talk about kind of the politics of it, but I'm going to kind of be pretty generous to them. They started out, and I mean, they were marketed probably to 12-year-old boys. They're probably not really looking for, who's in love with who and who might marry who. They're not little girls. So, and at that time in the world, you didn't have wives, children, family. This was kind of a military explorers crowd.
Well, Gene Roddenberry pitched it as, Wagon Train in the Stars, right? So, that was, and of course, cowboy films and TV shows were quite popular in the 60s, and that was some way that the heads would actually know that as well.
So, I think they get a little leeway. They did have women there, so that, at that time, is they were putting women, but less focus on necessarily the family. So our first look is Captain Kirk. Enormous womanizer. We can't really even get into all of the specific women. And obviously they wanted him as their action hero.
And we pull up the next one there. You see, I think that's still not everybody, but that's a lot of folks there. So.
And the specific one, I guess, to call out, do we have her?
Yes.
Do we have her listed?
Yeah. So Edith from City on the Edge of
and that
Forever.
one obviously is not a happy, and it really poses the question, what are you willing to do? Is this relationship worth more? And I feel like that is the question that follows Star Trek and kind of creates the problem, is how much are you willing to sacrifice for being in love? And they really put it in like kind of your career and this adventure, or a softer, more stable, kind of home romantic side. And obviously in this case, that was kind of the drama behind the episode. It couldn't work. It wasn't like the writers had this possibility and they decided no and threw it away. Like that kind of was the point of the episode, was them not working out.
And talking about the writer, Harlan Ellison that wrote that episode, as a lot of y'all probably know, the original thing was that Kirk was going to try to save her, and then Spock stops him. And then, Bones comes in and says, you know what, and then anyway, so Bones comes in at the end, and last minute they really, I think William Shatner thought it would look like he was too weak if he was doing that. And so Harlan Ellison talks about how this would have been as powerful as that is, and that is one of my favorite episodes, City on the Edge of Forever. I think a lot of y'all that are TOS fans. It's a great episode. It really shows what science fiction can do.
But I think that also goes back to the great episodes are very relationship centered.
See, but I kind of see it as not so much what would you sacrifice for love, but what would you sacrifice for your career? Because they really make it seem like anytime love gets involved, it has to play backseat to your career, which is why there's a woman of the week, or she can't last because that would get in the way of your career. That always has to come first.
I think they very much pit that.
Was that a representation of society at the time when these were being aired?
I would make the argument that one of the big things I talk about when I teach is whatever happens politically, socially, economically, technology influences all the arts. And so one thing I kind of think about is you look at the cowboy films throughout time. Before John F. Kennedy gets assassinated, it's real clear who the good guys and the bad guys are. After that, you start getting the good, bad, and the ugly. You don't know who is good or who's bad. There's a lot of gray going on. And I saw the same thing happen, especially with Enterprise, when we'll get to Enterprise, after 9/11 happens. There's a big shift in the television programs and movies at the time. And those are two big events that I can think about directly that influenced the arts tremendously. And obviously at this time period, this is Mad Men time period, right? I mean, you think of the TV show Mad Men, the way that men and women treated each other, or the way men treated women, is not like today in 2019, of course. And
No, they wanted Majel to be the first officer, and they're like, no, we can't have a woman first officer. But that had been an original plan in the works.
yeah, they hated that idea. They basically, when they did the second pilot, they basically got her out, and he put her back in as the nurse, of course.
But yeah, to your point, I think they do kind of make it very career relationship, and through the time, I'm not sure they ever really give us good answers about how that could come together, and you could be the captain, the first officer, and still be having this sort of more personal, hey, I got a wife, I got the kids. And again, we'll go on, and it's not completely zero. We'll see times when it is better.
How well was this episode received?
It's a fan favorite.
Great. Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe at the time?
At the time, well, again, Star Trek kind of had the little nerdy. When I talked to folks that were around that time period, they said the college campuses, they had the Star Trek, especially the second season, where word kind of got around the campfire. And of course, this is long before VCRs or anything, so you had to catch it that night. I think it was Monday night at 7 o'clock or something like that, or 8 o'clock, something like that. And they moved around the slots a bit as well. But the second season definitely has, I think, some of the strongest writing. Same thing with the first season. The third season.
It is a fan favorite now.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
More contemporary of this.
Yeah, and I think definitely it's definitely character driven. And some of the things with Spock in that episode are kind of humorous. He's having to hide his ears and whatnot. So
The rice picker.
so that was some great things. So if you want to,
Okay. Okay, so then another, I guess, potential relationship we have is Spock when he goes back for Ponfar, which, of course, doesn't end in a happy relationship for Spock. I don't know. Did they miss an opportunity? Would it have been great? I don't know. I feel part of Spock's emotional struggle was a part of what made his character so strong, and again, ultimately a fan favorite.
Well, maybe as long as they showed that the main character was willing to consider introducing long-term love, then that should be sufficient. We don't actually have to do it, but as long as they're willing, that'll be fine.
Well, the line is that, have you ever wondered how Vulcans, mate, or how they, get married or whatnot? And, go back to spawning, basically, I guess, like a fish and whatnot. And every 7 years, right, the Vulcans must go to the Pomfar. And, that one line at the end, having's not the same as wanting. It's not logical, but it's often true.
I love that line.
It's fantastic. Line. But of course, with Spock, you had so many, with basically, with Nurse Chapel and whatnot.
Yeah. No, Nurse Chapel, I feel like, from my perspective, yes.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Yeah, I think that's kind of what we're saying is, but how we can kind of bring things together and have things like adventures and careers with things like relationships and your personal, just your personal life. Because I think, again, obviously when you're watching a show, but I think we all like our personal life. We like our homes and our pets and our kids, and I guess there are some, but mostly, we don't want to be working 80-hour weeks, except those who do. More power to them.
I never could tell, were they trying to tell us that there are these relationships, but we're just not seeing them, or they really don't happen, that's why you're not seeing them?
I feel Nurse Chapel was a huge missed opportunity. And I think some of that was because, Spock's all logical and just doesn't have the emotions, but I think they missed a great opportunity to show, like you say, not just hint at it or we don't know, but to really kind of show a little fledgling relationship between him and Nurse Chapel. I think that would have been brilliant.
And on the reboot in 2009, of course, the Uhura and Spock relationship that develops. And I think some of that's kind of a callback to what they probably couldn't have done in the 60s. And again, at this time frame, Spock looked so foreign that originally the NBC wanted to kind of hide how he looked because he looked too demonic because of the ears and whatnot. So the blood's green blood, right? So it's a little bit different.
But I think that was a great missed opportunity to play up that relationship.
It definitely would have been interesting to see what that would happen because, of course, his parents were a Terran, human and Vulcan. So it would make sense that he could have saw the same type of relationship as well going on.
So now we're going to move to Next Generation. Are any other thoughts about original series? But
and the one thing on that one, like Bones, really the second episode is the only backstory we get of Bones in the original series, and it kind of talks about his marriage and whatnot, how I got divorced. On the reboot, they talked about she left me, and all she left me was my bones, basically, and that's how he got his name. But anyways.
But yeah, okay. So in Next Gen, we're kind of moving up decades, and now even in their world, they're allowing the wives, the children, they can come on. It's not kind of just a military exploration. They're really opening it up. They have a great opportunity to have a little more personal drama, private life, starting with Next Gen.
Yeah, and that definitely reflects the times in the '80s because in reality, you wouldn't think of any ship having kids and families on it. You would think of a battleship about to go to battle and they're going to have a family on it. I guess that mindset was more like a military base. Mm-hmm. They have families on there. We both had backgrounds growing up as military kids and whatnot. I lived on the Air Force bases. You lived on post a lot, right? So that kind of mindset.
So okay, Picard and Beverly, and I said earlier, if anyone, that was actually pitched to Gates McFadden as Picard's love interest. So that was actually supposed to happen, and of course, Gates isn't there for a season. I think some of that got revamped. However, she came back in plenty of time. And they even had sort of Picard, Beverly romances, but Beverly was kind of, but I was like, why couldn't that have just been happy? Why couldn't they have just been in a happy relationship? I think it would have been a good idea. I think the fans would have really, because the fans love those episodes.
She's the only one who can relieve him of command, and they're also in a relationship. That's a very serious conflict
Of interest. That's a good point.
I think the military would have protocol that maybe there's a second doctor there that could
Let Wesley do it.
And that's another point. Because they had a really great opportunity and they played up Picard, Wesley, I think that would have been a very interesting dynamic to maybe have Picard and Beverly think about getting married, and maybe Picard's a stepfather, and maybe he has to deal with Wesley in that kind of dynamic. I just think that was a golden opportunity that fans would have really enjoyed.
We saw little hints of that, especially the episode where they're connected together psychically, and she was, you're
attached.
you're attached. You're in love with you're in love with me.
But then, and this is where I think is a real kind of, I don't know what they're thinking. If anybody has ideas, even in their hypothetical future that didn't really happen, they're divorced. Why couldn't it just be, oh, this is some hypothetical future I found myself in, and Beverly's my wife. That's cool. Like, I don't see the reason it couldn't be happy.
Yeah. Well, what about when, I think it was in Generations, when they go through the Nexus and they show his vision of having all his kids around, but where was the woman who gave him these kids?
I think she was in the background, kind of like a dream sequence, but I kind of get along this. She kind of was like Beverly Crusher, and it kind of goes a little bit further.
Yeah.
We'll jump ahead just a second.
Again, you didn't put I'm sorry, I don't remember all their names. This was Nala, I think. And this episode really highlights, like I said, that choice of, if I'm in command, can I send this woman I love into a dangerous situation? It really pits that against each other. And on that one, I might give the writers sort of a pass. It's kind of evident why that relationship can't work out, because Picard feels like, I can't just order you around like I order all of my other soldiers at my command. Like, I can't just do that with you. So it definitely presents the problem. And it presents, I guess, an unhappy situation where their relationship just can't work out.
The military actually faces this now.
Yes, it's a hot topic. I would agree.
Very, very strictly prohibited for any relationship within a chain of command.
Do you command someone that you're...
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, typically, if you're an officer, not commissioned, that's really frowned upon heavily.
That's frowned upon, but anybody that's in a subordinate, superior
Yeah.
relation, of any sort, that's a non-starter. It's a youthful code of military justice violation.
You would have to have like a spreadsheet walking through the ship of what woman I can even look at in that.
It's no one for Picard, though. Picard's got...
Yeah,
But again, maybe Beverly, because she can really, she might be
She's a
one that's
command
almost,
officer.
getting close to...
I mean,
you have to date other starship captains.
yes.
or
yes,
civilians.
or civilians.
Yeah.
Loxana Troy, that could work.
Have fleet meetings every once in a while.
Unless they were in.
We didn't even put Loxana. She flirts with him.
Well, and also on here, I kind of alluded to the movie, and if you look, to me, when I saw this episode, I thought, she looks like Beverly Crusher. That's kind of Picard's type. And so I think you kind of alluded that, and maybe the writer saw this. I'm someone, obviously, I think that's too much of a coincidence the way they look, that they aren't, they look
Oh, when
similar to
casting,
me.
I would agree. You can cast,
Because that's probably a wig. I mean, both of them are probably wearing wigs. So
in casting, you can get any type look you, 100 girls audition for that. Okay, and then we have Vosh.
Thanks to Q.
Yeah.
She's the bad girl type.
She is the bad girl
That's
type.
the one that he eventually falls for.
Yes, and
She will be there next week.
yes, because she's got to go off. Like, she doesn't have time for anything. She's got to go have her adventures and go off with Q. I feel like she's not going to be there next week, so I don't necessarily know that was a missed opportunity of a relationship that could have gone on in the show.
And this is almost all of them except for maybe Waxwana and also the Inner Light episode where I guess it's made up in some ways, that he has a family and whatnot.
And in that one, it's a happy
think-
family. It's a happy family with kids. It
Well,
really shows that
they're
world.
Not so happy.
Well, except that the world's dying.
Yeah. And I think that's about it for Picard. That was it was about 5 the whole season, unlike Kirk, which is maybe 5 in the episode potentially, you know. And I think that also shows some of the things going on in the 80s, the thought process of, you know, at that time there obviously the diseases are going around and everything like that. So I think that the Lavalier options in the 60s were not as pronounced in the 80s and whatnot. So.
So then we get to a golden couple. Picard and Troy.
Riker.
I'm sorry. Not Picard and Troy. Troy and Riker.
Now we're just shipping.
Yeah, I would say that is one that, okay, for the most part, the writers, well, and actually, this is not a writer's thing at all. The writers did not want this relationship. They told the actors to tone it down. And Jonathan and Marina were just like, nah, it's too much fun. We're just going to keep like looking at each other and making the eyes. And the actors were what kept that relationship moving forward.
So they had to write a small story in to cover it as to why the actors.
Well, I think it was just that they never let it die. So whenever they wanted to come back to it, it was kind of always there simmering. Even though they had, like, after the first, they're like, oh yeah, we put you together in the pilot, but we want Riker to be our, you know, macho boy that can go around with anybody. And obviously Troy kind of became the woman of the show. And so they're like, yeah, tone that down. And then, but they wouldn't do it. They just kind of kept that there on the back burner. So when they needed it, obviously it was there, and ultimately they did get married in the movies. I would only say that they should have never toned it down. It should have always been the relationship.
Well, you see on there also, I kind of put out the side they had relationships in the series, and because again, the writers didn't want them together.
Yeah, they did have other relationships because the writers.
And really, Riker probably was the closest to Captain Kirk on the Enterprise D, you know, it's not near as many as Kirk, but you know, it's way more than Picard. But I mean, you're definitely right, because definitely, you know,
They got married. So I was a fangirl, sorry. It made my little heart happy.
even though that movie's not so great.
No, the movie's terrible, but that part, I'm like, yay, I love it.
Yeah, so that was definitely.
And I really kind of loved that it was the actors who were like, no, we're going to be like.
So in between that, before they got married, what did you think? I mean, Worf and Deanna Troi, they kind of were sitting up with Alexander a little bit, of course.
Yeah, I think Alexander was kind of why they sort of started seeing each other in a different light. From my perspective, I thought it was a mismatch. So, like, I was not a terrible, huge fan.
But from what you said, it sounds like the actors, Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis, they wanted to keep playing off this connection, and the writers kept saying no. So then the writers say, so now we're going to pair you with Worf. And they tried to force it on everyone, and everyone said no.
Well, we end the series with them. All Good Things. Remember, that's them coming out and trying to talk about the relationship. They're about to kiss, and then Picard comes and asks, you know, what year is it, or what time is it, or what's the date? And so I'll say this: if Worf didn't go to DS9, could something else happen? I don't know.
While I think that's a mismatch. I would say her and Worf and Alexander are a good example of what I'm talking about, like a more seeing kind of like your kids and your home life and those struggles. Worf and Troy really did bring that out. I still thought it was a mismatch. I wasn't crazy about it.
And we get Geordi and Data.
Geordi and Data, his relationship, he's an android, so I'm going to give him a pass, like, because I love Data, huge Data fan, but ultimately, and then, but why did they do that to Geordi? Why did they give Geordi nobody and then some weird, bizarre holiday?
You know,
I think Geordi needed a girlfriend. They could have had a girlfriend for Geordi. Real girlfriend, not on the holiday.
In the alternate future with Beverly and Picard getting divorced, you know, of course, he marries Leah Brahms, and he's a writer. He gives up the technobabble, and so at least in that alternate future, that's happened.
He should have gotten a
And
girlfriend.
I think in the books also, which I don't know if there's so much canon. I think that goes on because he does get. Was it Enterprise or Voyager? Anyways, Geordi is in command of a ship. I can't remember which.
I think it's Voyager.
I think it's Voyager. And so, yeah, it would have been interesting to see, if Tasha Yar would have remained on the ship. Could there would have been some
Or
possibilities.
what Beverly's nurse
Yeah.
could have been a possibility for Geordi.
The story arc, or his character arc would have been Geordi if he had relationships, or a relationship.
I feel like
You're looking at somebody that's dedicated to his engineering and moves toward being more of his human side or his
I think that
emotional side. Is that
could have been very interesting. Yeah.
At some point, if you start pairing off crew members, then it kind of becomes the expectation that wouldn't they all want to pair off? Wouldn't everybody want somebody? So then it becomes very difficult, I would think, to reassign people to different ships when they pair off with somebody that they're.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
that happens now?
Yes,
You only got to look at the military now.
It's very topical.
To see what's going on. This is already real life.
Yeah.
And I just threw Wesley in there.
Yeah, Wesleyan.
And and of course, I think there was some conflict, kind of like when Beverly Crusher, they got rid of her the second season. There was some conflict with producers or whatnot. So Wesley, they shipped him off to Starfleet or going on with the universe, traveling the world and whatnot. But we saw a couple of small relationships with him.
So Ashley Judd and that princess.
The princess one with the one that had the protector that could morph into various things, and so I would say on that one there that was okay for adolescents.
He's a teeny bopper, so I'll say they did all right. I mean, that was fine.
And there's a problem back
And
there.
now we get to Deep Space Nine. So now we're on a space station, which space station, okay, it's not in the best location. It's obviously kind of remote, but we're not really on a moving vessel exploring. Presumably it's stable, and there's a certain amount of just, well, until we get to the war, a certain amount of just, you could expect that women, children, wives, everything could be relatively safe. It could be okay.
I was going to point out, there was an episode of Next Generation where I think it was either Klingons or Romulans. They talked about how you're so weak, you bring your families,
Please.
your women and children on the ship. You remember that one?
Yeah, I can't remember.
And it goes into a lot of explanation about what's going on there. So I don't know if you wanted to talk about that a little bit. So the contrast with the stationary facility.
Yeah. And it starts out, I think, Deep Space, well, they're kind of peacekeeping and exploring, but it's nothing like the Enterprise that could.
They give you they go ahead and say, no, family is important. It's so important that we killed your wife before episode.
Yeah, I know. And so basically you have Sisko as a single dad in Starfleet raising a child, and obviously he loves the child, of course, but however, losing his wife to, Kutus of Borg, of course he dealt with that for a really long time as well.
But I will say, I think the writers did that for a reason, and I think it was important to the show. So I don't think that was just, we have this great opportunity, we have these two great characters, there's no reason we couldn't see them, having drinks sometime. I think that really was important to Deep Space Nine.
If they would have had the family together, it would have been a different Deep Space Nine. And I think by the time, of course, Gene Roddenberry had been passed away for a period of time, and Ron Moore and some of the other ones, they had a more not as pristine feature. The one reason why I love the TOS so much, that here are all the peoples from the world are working together to seek out new life and civilization, working together, and we get to pretty much everything after. And Next Generation was pretty close to that, but after that, it starts going to, well, there's the Vietnam War's going on, and you're fighting all these other things going on. The Borg conflict, the founders and everything in Deep Space Nine. I really love Deep Space Nine. I don't know if any of y'all are big fans of Deep Space Nine. I really love it a great deal. It's different than Next Generation.
It got a little darker.
It got a lot darker in some aspects. But it would have been interesting if they would have had this nuclear family that, I forgot what his wife was. She was something on the ship. I can't remember. I don't think she was Starfleet. I think she was probably stellar photography or by something like that. That's a support. But it would definitely been different, and some aspects. And we're talking about the captain area. He didn't really have relationships with any of the crew there, right?
Yeah, that's his wife Jessica that died. But again, it would have been interesting. But I feel like it was important that his wife, yeah.
Yeah, and this is from the Mirror universes where they go back a couple of times.
Because she's alive in the Mirror universe.
Because of Borg, what wasn't there.
But then, okay.
That's up there.
His other relationship that I think with Yates, that I think that would have really worked. I personally was really unhappy with the ending they gave Cisco. After everything, why couldn't the writers have just said, okay, he and Yates are married, she was even pregnant, she was having gonna have his baby, and he's like, I don't know if he's dead or with the wormhole aliens, but he's not there. And there was no reason he couldn't have retired to Bajor like he wanted. He was already like looking at real estate, building his house, ready to go. I don't see why that wouldn't have been a perfectly happy ending. That would have just let me sleep better at night, thinking that, yeah, he's there with Yates, they had their kid, Jake comes to visit, it's all happy. Why do they have a problem with happy?
And it pretty much makes it where you're not going to have a Deep Space Nine reunion or movie or anything.
Yeah.
You know? There's no Deep Space Nine movies out there, right? Because Cisco and spoilers.
That was great. She was sometimes there, but she was on our own ship, so we didn't have to deal with it in every episode, but she was still around.
And Jake liked her.
And Jake liked her. We got that
relationship.
dynamic of Jake and like, hey, this other woman and what's going to happen and what all that looks like. It was
At the end, Jake and her were kind of together looking at it, at the wormhole and whatnot, so I'm sure that relationship still continued on. But yeah, that would have been really interesting.
I think it was a missed opportunity, personally. I don't know why the writers did it that way, but they didn't ask me. And here's another kind of golden couple that actually is kind of proving a time when they did have a pretty happy relationship. Miles and Keiko, they had 2 children, they were on their ship having their careers, and they really presented some conflicts, some things they didn't get along about, some of the difficulties of having a marriage and kids and also trying to pursue your career, but they did it in a really fair way, I feel like, and still kept a happy life that you'd be like, yeah, that could be, they're happy, they're in a relationship, they're together, they're not, getting a divorce, they're not hating each other, no one's dying, like, it's good. So I think the writers, that relationship, I think, was really strong.
And they kept it even in the ending, right? Because O'Brien was going to teach. O'Brien was going to teach at Starfleet Academy, and Keiko had a job opportunity on Earth, I think, as well. So
yeah, even in the end, they're going, back to Earth together.
And even when they got married on, this is the one where Data learns how to tap dance from the Doctor on the Next Generation when he was going to their wedding.
So which are out of the fan base? Which are the characters most liked? Is it the ones that have a happy life? Is it the ones that are tragic? Or something.
Okay.
To a tragic.
Obviously, Next Generation, Picard, Data, Worf are probably the big 3 in Next Generation, right? And of course, you get the trio in the original one. It's always going to be Kirk, Spock, and Bones. I mean, that's just. I mean, I like that. I like Sulu, I like Chekhov, I like Uhura, Scotty. I love Scotty, but they're not going to be there. Deep Space Nine.
Deep Space Nine was so very ensemble. I don't.
Kira, Dax.
Yeah, Kira, Dax.
I mean, I like Garrett from Deep Space Nine a lot. And
but I wouldn't put him in the.
No.
He never would make the column.
I guess Worf, because that's one reason why they put him on there. I would say probably Worf, Dax, and Quark maybe.
Yeah.
Because everybody loved Quark, even though he's someone that you love to hate. Maybe Odo. I don't know.
Maybe.
So.
They made Dax so likable, but yet it's almost like you've already had multiple lifetimes and multiple relationships, so we're not going to focus on you. And then all of a sudden, enter Worf, and he said, "Hey, you didn't get to keep Deanna Troi, but you're going to get to keep this."
And that also was driven by the actors. Really? Terry Farrell and Worf, I think they kind of knew each other, were friends. And so when he came on set, being Worf, she's like, yeah, let's just flirt. See these lines? Let's just be crazy flirty. So they started doing that, and then just we would get scripts, and the writers were writing to that. So we were like, hey, yeah, this is cool. So that was really actor driven. Okay, so Odo and Kira. Anybody want to say anything? But for me, this was a mismatch. But I'm a military child, and I had huge problems with Odo's character once we got to the war and his divided loyalties. So I might not be the best person to judge that relationship.
And even though they let him have the relationship, of course he goes away at the end.
Yeah, it's not a happy relationship. He chooses to go back to the Founders and leave Kira. But Kira's she understands that. I think that's what she expected, so.
Yeah, but she's very loyal to her own people.
Yes, they're both very loyal to their own
There's
people.
conflict between her people versus Starfleet.
Yes.
So it makes sense that maybe that they mirrored his conflict with his own people.
And I think that's what, she would be very.
Chemistry,
I didn't see it, so no.
The only thing I liked about it was when, because Quark, knew everything. Quark was smart, and Odo and Quark were buds, in a non-liking way, if you can put it that way. So when Quark would say, you had the opportunity to open negotiations, and you never did close the deal, and so like even Quark was kind of pushing him, saying, if you're going to do this, go out there and do this. So I like that interaction probably more so than the relationship, just because even right off the bat, you saw kind of Odo, longing for Kira in some aspects. I don't know if that was on purpose or they might have had a deal together or whatever. Or sometimes actors do this thing, they have a secret that no one else knows. And it kind of gives you a little bit of a backstory for something. And I don't know if that was...
A real secret or one that they made up?
The one they make it for their character.
So they kind of look interesting. Like when they're supposed to be doing something, they can kind of think, I know this.
If you remember, you must be too young to remember The Greatest American Hero with William Catt and the Bill Maxwell, what's his name, Robert Cupp, that played it. His secret was that he was in love with the Greatest American Hero's girlfriend, and so like every time they were on set together, he was a little bit flustered in some ways, even though he's such a good actor. But that was his secret for that particular series there. If y'all remember, a couple of y'all.
I feel like they paired those two up to show you that this one was doomed from the beginning. So
Yeah.
in the end, it's not going to work out.
Yeah, and it didn't, and I was sort of okay with that because again, I may be biased, but that was not a hit for me.
Now this was one you were thinking should have worked.
I actually kind of like that. Now, honestly, the biggest reasons is not the writers that Loxana and Odo couldn't work is because Majel Barrett was not going to have an ongoing part in a series. She wasn't going to work that much. So I guess fair enough they couldn't, but I think that could have been a cute relationship. I really liked them together. I think she kind of balanced him out. He's kind of like a melancholy, and she's the opposite of melancholy. So I think they really brought some good qualities out in each other. I wish that it had been a situation where Majel could have been, if not a completely regular cast, but recurring more frequently.
She could have came once a season.
She came 2 or 3 times.
Well,
but yeah,
yeah,
more.
yeah.
I wish she could have come more often, and that they could have developed her and Odo. I like that much better than Odo and Kira.
Now this is one.
Yes, and this is good. So great. We see so much more about the Klingons. I really love how I think before she even knew it or the writers had thought about it, Dax was very knowledgeable and like a big, I guess, fan of Klingon culture and history. So then when we bring Worf, it kind of makes sense that they would get along really well. And I understand, not necessarily the writers, but in reality, Terry Farrell didn't come back. But I'm still suggesting they didn't have to kill Dax. They could have still had a happy relationship.
She could have been transferred very easily. That happens in the military all the time. She could have gone back to Starfleet to teach, or
And she
got
and
on the
Worf
ship.
could have written letters, or he could come on I just got back from Earth to see Dax. They didn't have to make that the end. But I think that honestly, they were sort of mad at Terry Farrell, and they wanted it to be like you will not come back. There will not be anything. You will not guest star. I think they were just trying to spite her, which I think was a mistake. I think that still could have been a good relationship. It was a good relationship. They could have just left us with that.
Yeah, definitely. And you particularly didn't care for Worf in Next Generation as much as you did.
And I don't know if anybody else had the same feelings. And of course, I was watching this as a teenage girl, so I really, to me, Worf was whatever. He was there in the back. If it was a Worf episode, I didn't care. And I was considerably older when I was watching Deep Space Nine, but in Midday, he's one of my favorite characters. I really love his arc. And I feel like the writing it's not just me. The writing for Worf is much more expanded. There's much more character development, so you get a much rounder Worf. And yeah, in Deep Space Nine, I absolutely love him. And I don't know if anybody else like had,
Yeah,
you know.
definitely better portrayed in Deep Space Nine than TNG.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
TNG, he only had one thing going for him. He was a Klingon in Starfleet, and he acted very much like a Klingon. In Deep Space Nine, they tried to show his human side, which not really. I don't think he was human, but
He was raised by him, yeah.
Yeah.
I just I like Worf when he was a little bit more unknown, more for that warrior moment. I thought it was a mistake to open him up to
Oh.
things.
Well, I mean, I love Worf right off the bat, because he's a man with very few words, just like the stranger comes in town in the cowboy film,
But I did like that we got to see like a Klingon wedding. We got to see in like a Klingon ship. I mean, we got to kind of learn a lot more about the Klingon world.
And the Fistful of Datas episode with Worf in there, and having the
I love when Data's trying to get him to watch his cat. It was like, I will feed him. I love that. And then we have Dr. Bashir and the Dabo girl.
Yeah, it's a Lita, isn't it? Lita, yeah.
Which actually, I don't know if there's another one just for them, but that actually works into a happy relationship, not with the Doctor, but she dumps the Doctor for Rom. And at the end of the show, they're still standing strong. She and Rom are just married and happy. And
What I did like on this relationship here is when they broke up, they went to Risa, and there was like this big ceremony that they would do to divorce each other as a couple, basically, and then go on and have a joyful life. And then, of course, I love Rom. I thought it was.
I was glad Rom got the girl.
And one of the Star Trek conventions, I got to meet Rom in person, and he's such a cool person and whatnot. So it was really fantastic. I asked him, did he know he was going to become the Grand Neocus? He said, no, I had no idea at all. But
I don't know if the writers knew he was.
No,
doing
he said it wasn't either. But and then I just threw in Quark, that obviously no real stable relationship. He's a Ferengi. Obviously, the way Ferengi, the typical Ferengi treat women, it's not like.
He's very looking out for number one.
Yes.
I love him, but he is.
So Quark did not get married. Now the episodes with him and the Klingon, I can't remember her name, but anyways, those were kind of interesting ones where he had to marry her.
That's right. Yes.
And
Klingon he had
Worf
to
had
marry.
to help him fight with a bat'leth. That was great.
And then that brings us to Voyager. How are we doing?
Well, we got a few minutes left. We can at least get through Voyager.
And I feel like to start with, we have, our first female captain, but we are back to like a moving around ship.
Lost in space.
Yeah.
Lost in space, basically.
And very much an issue. Kate, when she took it, said, my character will not be a love interest. She's not getting with Chakotay. She's the commander. She has to have everyone respect her. And I feel like that, I respect that decision. I see why that happened, and I don't disagree with it, but that kind of, I think, limited some of the things that her character could do. She had her, is it a boyfriend or were they married? Oh, her boyfriend from back home, which obviously now she's on the other side of the galaxy.
And they probably made it that way, made it a boyfriend instead of a husband, because if it was a husband, I don't know. Now, she's lost at sea, basically, right? I mean, for Starfleet's purposes, she's lost, at least for the first 3 or 4 years of Voyager, until Barclay comes in with a beacon and whatnot. But that would have been different. That would have definitely been different. So I think, writing-wise, they set up as a boyfriend. He's watching the dogs as she's in space for this 6 weeks or whatever it was, for this particular mission against the Badlands, against the Maquis.
But again, from the setup, that was not going to be a relationship that they could really do much with, based on the premise of the show. And then, so again, the kind of possibility, and I don't think it's developed because she was just said, no, that's not even going to be a thing. So again, I don't know if she and Chakotay would have worked, but they didn't really explore that. I don't know if they maybe hinted that she might have kind of been attracted, but like nothing was going to go on there. There was that episode when they were on the planet and they thought the ship was gone briefly.
When they couldn't leave.
It kind of changed their relationship, but yeah, basically nothing ever really developed.
Yeah, and I guess for her, that makes a little sense that she didn't want to see him as some damsel that would be like, one of Captain Kirk's conquests or whatnot.
Didn't want to have her command sort of undermined.
Well, but she did mate with Tom Paris as a salamander, right?
Yes, she did. That was some great writing. And they left a whole planet of like salamander children that they were just like, gotta go. Great writing.
So once again, to save the series, they bring in somebody into the series, and 7 to 9, I think, definitely kept Voyager going, kind of like Worf kept DS9 going. Being Borg, she's kind of the Spock Data type character, of course, logical, and not the fish out of water type thing with relationships and whatnot. And the Doctor obviously the Doctor's another fish out of the water, being a hologram, and. You want to talk?
Well, I don't know if that would be a relationship that could have worked, if that was a missed opportunity or kind of doomed from the beginning, because he's a hologram and she's getting over being a Borg. I do feel like because of Kate's decision to kind of say, look, I'm the captain and that's what I am, I think that opened them up to try to cast her and open up a more sensational a character that could have these kind of love interests, which is why I think that happened. I think that relationship was a little awkward.
And pretty much everybody else, I guess, was trying to get with
7 of 9. Everybody wanted 7 of 9.
And so there's Harry Kim, who really never had any relationships. Couldn't get any rank on that as well. Because
he got to that one planet where they all wanted to mate with him.
And then, of course, at the end, Chakotay, this seemed forced.
Well, and my problem with that, again, from why I blame the writers on this one, 7 to 9 even said there was an episode that was like her dream or her fantasy, and she was with Chakotay, and she said, well, do you want me to play that up? Now that we've had this experience, do you want me to kind of play like I sort of actually have a little crush on him, or I'm starting to have feelings for him? And like, no, that's dead, that's done, don't do it, play it straight. And then as an actress, then in the end, they put me with Chakotay, and I was like, we could have had so much more development. We could have had so many more little moments whereby the fan or the viewers would have been expecting that than just this, nothing, and then kind of a plopped out of nowhere. I will give them the credit, though, at the end. I mean, they're a couple. It's happy. Nobody's dead. Nobody's divorced. We're just a happy couple, so I'll give them the credit.
If you have to wrap up the storyline for a bunch of characters, you can knock 2 birds out with 1 stone by pairing them off and saying, there they go, and then move on to the next. But it made no sense. It was very forced.
Yeah, it was, and I think it didn't have to be. If they had played a few small moments between them and like let that actress lead up to that, I don't think it would have felt as forced as just like, boom, they're together right in the sunset.
Did Voyager get canceled agreement like before they anticipated?
No, they did 7 years. They did it 7 years. Yeah. So Neelix and Cass.
Yeah.
And just looking at the picture to me,
It squicks me out. I'm sorry, not a fan.
And also like some of the ways how controlling he kind of was. I guess he, obviously a different culture, than Terran and whatnot. And Cass only lives a few years, so that's why she looks young and whatnot.
I think it should have been played more as he was more of a paternal grandfather type figure to her. That's just my.
Maybe more like a doctor and a companion, even. This
is Doctor Who, Doctor companion relationship. Then. And so pretty quickly the writers realized that it didn't work, and I don't think this would have worked either with a doctor. Doctor pretty much was. He kind of had a crush on her, but. Pretty much anybody, I think you have a little bit of crush on. Poor guy. And then. Although we did it as the Doctor, like his fantasy was a happy life. He had that holodeck program that would run, that was just him being married with his kids. Everything was great at home. So there was kind of that longing in that character. And before they wrote Cass off the series, Tom Paris had, I think they were gearing him and her to be together, and then they decided that I guess they couldn't afford 2 actors at the same time, so they wrote her out. But if you look there on that particular photo there, you can kind of see some of the dramatic of that as well. Well, let's at least get to Tom Paris and B'Elanna Torres. You want to go? As a couple, I like them, but I feel like some of their writing was really bad. Oh, you gotta say that one the episode you. I think it's maybe the worst romance line of anything, not just science fiction, of romantic comedy, of anything. They're out in space, in their spacesuits, and they kind of start talking, and she kind of starts being a little more cool, you know.
And they're running out of air, right?
And they're running out of air. It's like, oh, well, I have to get all the way out in deep space to initiate first contact. And I'm just like, no, just no. Like, just for that line alone, no. But they do end up together. I don't know. I think there was some bad writing. I don't hate them as a couple.
I think both of them kind of grew in an arc, and I think Torres definitely grew in an arc as well when they got married. I think that was a good arc for her and a good arc for him. Not so much that he was a playboy or whatnot, but he grounded him down to be, you know, much like a regular officer who gets married and kind of gets a family, and at some point. So I thought it worked for the most part. I think it works better. I think she actually wound up working better than Kes would have worked out.
Yes.
But didn't she dropped out of the academy and then joined
She's
the
Maquis.
Yeah.
joined Maquis.
Yes.
And then he graduated from the academy but had trouble.
Yeah, he got arrested.
And
And
didn't he have pretend to be a Maquis or something? I know
No,
did.
no, he was arrested. Janeway gets him because he knows the Badlands and he's a great pilot, and his dad was an admiral. Paris's dad was an admiral, and so she takes him, you know, on a furlough for 2 weeks, and
And it ends up on the other
Yeah.
side of the
He's-
galaxy.
He's violated parole for sure.
oh yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
yeah.
And she busts him back down in rank for a while there as well, because I can't remember what he did, but whatever he did, he got busted down in rank.
Which
as
kind of
well.
makes him good. They think that kind of makes him a good match in some ways.
And you know, going back to the Vulcan mindset that he obviously couldn't go upon far because he's a zillion miles away, so they use the holodeck to recreate his wife. So I would say in some aspects, as a long-term, you know, long-distance relationship, that still works.
Yeah.
And so,
And he got letters that he would like reference. I mean, not often in that show, but like, you know, he'd say, "My wife wrote me this," and it was evident that like that was a, you know, he was very much invested in that relationship and very sad that everything was working out the way it was and he couldn't get home.
real quickly, because we got just a few minutes, and the next couple ones I don't have as many slides on. Really, not a lot of relationships going on in Enterprise. The captain, really not so much. You know, basically Tucker and DePaul basically was, and at the end that relationship doesn't work out. They kill off Trip for some reason at the end, and then Dr. Phlox is married to multiple wives at the same time, and this was the one wife that he was letting Trip know, hey, yeah, she's really good. You would have a great time with her and whatnot, and so. But Trip says that I think Trip doesn't, and that was one of the crew people that had liked Phlox also. So that was really that, and of course we get the Discovery, and we only have two big relationships on there. Of course, it's Michael and Box, right? And basically that relationship's going on. And of course, we saw them earlier, Hugh and Sandvix, right? And so we have the first LDGB relationship on television. And you think back to 50 some odd years, you know, obviously NBC in 1966, 67, that never would have taken place. And now 2019, 2018, that takes place. So
there's definitely been an evolution in their kind of relationships and showing, I guess, multiple aspects of their characters. Because even the characters, I think, as we go along, get rounder and more developed. But I still think there are a lot of, or at least a good number of missed opportunities that, I don't know, maybe they should bring in a female writer or maybe a romantic comedy writer, just a writer that doesn't specialize in kind of action and science fiction and those kind of plots.
And his attitude been going on since the action adventure, and you know, we're kind of brainstorming. And Homer popped to mind as
yeah, in the Odyssey, Homer comes home to his wife Penelope. There's a celebration, and then he's like, "Oh, but I gotta go. Yeah, I promised that one guy, so I gotta go get back on the ship. Catch you later, babe." So it's not new that kind of the action adventure is like, "Oh yeah, you're this cool person I love, but gotta go kill this dragon."
So this went from They went from you can't have a relationship in Starfleet, kind of.
Well, you couldn't bring wives on ships,
oh,
or yeah.
You got families on board.
Yes.
But we really don't. And two, you can, you do, and it doesn't end well for any of the people. And then in Voyager, they said you have to because you're stuck in the Delta Quadrant, but you're inevitably gonna get paired up with the wrong person. So I feel like they still didn't accomplish a successful union.
I think maybe they need some writers with better kind of romantic skills, or better relationship focus.
And I'll say this, if you think in the 60s what the divorce rate was compared to what the divorce rate is today, at least in this country. And I think in some ways that most of the people I know sadly have been divorced. A lot of my friends and whatnot. I don't know if you all know. I probably know more people that have gotten divorced than are still married in some aspects. So it's kind of interesting. If you kind of looked at that, I don't know whether it is off the bat. I'm sure I could find that data, the difference, and I would suspect that there's a bigger divorce rate now than it was in the 60s, just because as time has gone on and whatnot.
I think maybe that what they were trying to do is it's not so much about the story as it is the commercial success, what they're looking at for the target audience. So the original Star Trek series was something different, maybe. It was, and so there were comedies, there were romances, there were, it was all kind of, it almost seemed like they were in different spots, and then when you start getting families in there, this is giving now the writers a lot more opportunity to have these different relationships, the kids, it appeals to a broader base. So it seems like a lot of this is just commercially driven.
Yeah.
It's how they want to appeal and how they want to target audiences and advertisers.
I'll say this: you definitely see a difference between, Kirk, Kirk, and then Next Generation, and.
Well, the original series alone would never have interested me. I was like a sort of teenage, preteen girl when Next Gen came out. So obviously what I liked was, there's Beverly Crusher, and she has pretty red hair, and she flirts with the captain, and there's Deanna Troi, and Riker really likes her. So that was what was drawing me in as a different audience member that they would have appealed to. Because if they had kept sort of that original series dynamic, I would have flipped right past it. So you're right. That did open them up to a bigger market, definitely.
Definitely. Well, I think we're out of time. I want to thank you all for coming by and giving us some comments and whatnot like that. And hopefully we get a chance to come back here next year and maybe expand this out, or do Star Trek again, or maybe Star Wars. There's a lot of different relationships, and I want to thank y'all for coming out to this panel and everything.
Star Wars would be
Oh,
Yes,
definitely,
yes.
definitely. Thank you all so much, y'all.